Hello everyone. Today on From Scratch to Finish, we are going to make the perfect pie crust. So what we are going to need is all-purpose flour, salt, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter chilled and cut into chunks, 3/4 cup of vegetable shortening chilled, and 1/2 cup of ice water. So to get started, we are going to add the flour and salt into a large mixing bowl. So 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, looks like I should have filled this up. And 1 teaspoon of salt. Alright, then we need to add the chilled shortening and butter, and then use our pastry blender or a fork to cut them into the flour until the mixture resembles coarse crumbs. So I have my 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter already cut up into chunks. You need to make sure it is chilled. And then I have my 3/4 cup of chilled vegetable shortening. And then we're going to use our pastry blender and cut the vegetable shortening and the butter into the flour and salt until it resembles coarse crumbs. So last week on my video, I asked a question about which movie had an actress talking about Crisco and how Crisco can solve anything or can fix any problem. And in case you didn't know, that came from the movie The Help. And the actress who played Minnie is the one who said that. She was teaching Celia how to make chicken and stuff. Man, did her chicken look good. Alright, so just about got this to where it resembles coarse crumbs. All right. So I don't know how well you can see that with the light. That's what it looks like. All right, so now we need a half a cup of ice cold water. And the recipe says to add a tablespoon of water at a time until the dough begins to clump together. It doesn't want you to overmix, and you might not need the whole thing of water. I don't really measure out a tablespoon at a time. I kind of just pour some in and then start mixing it together and add more as needed. You're going to gently mold the dough into a ball. Trying to make sure the ice doesn't get in there. Might need to go get some more water. Just don't want it crumbly like it was when I tried to make my toaster pastry tarts. So it's in a ball. I'm trying to think if I want to add more water or not. Nah. So what I'm going to do is divide it in half, and we want to kind of make a disc shape and wrap it up in our plastic wrap. And it needs to go in either the refrigerator for 2 hours, or you can put it in the freezer for 30 minutes. A little bit more, but not all of it. So I kind of just mold it into a disc-ish shape. And wrap it up, and I am going to put it in the freezer for 30 minutes. That way we can go on and finish making the pie crust. Now, if you're making it during the day and you have other things to get done before you start making some pie crust, by all means, put it in the refrigerator for 2 hours. Your disc-like shape does not have to be perfect. All right, I'm going to pop these into the freezer for 30 minutes, and then we'll be back to finish making the pie crust. See you then. All right, we are back. It has been 30 minutes and my dough has been in the freezer for those 30 minutes. Now the recipe says to dampen a large towel or cloth, and then you're going to place a large piece of parchment paper over it. Kind of folds it down, and then we're going to lightly flour both sides of the pie dough disc and set it on the parchment paper. My parchment paper wants to just roll up. So we're going to get some flour and lightly flour both sides. Put a little flour on my rolling pin. We're going to gently press the dough out into a large circle. Now it says to always start in the center of the crust and work outwards. You want your dough to be thin and about a ½ inch longer than the diameter of your pie dish. This is one of my pie dishes. And the other one's about the same size. So you want it to be 1 inch longer in diameter than your pie dish. Mine don't usually come out in a nice perfect circle, but I do the best that I can. It's starting to stick. And I always just kind of measure it to see if it's going to work. Now this is the part. It's never quite easy. We're going to tip it over. Into our pie dish. Press it down. before I finish the rest of this, I am going to go start preheating my oven. We need that at 375. All right, so we are going to trim around the edges. Kind of just feel where the edge of the pie pan or the pie plate is. And pull off any extra. Extra dough always tastes good if you just pop it in the oven after you sprinkle it with some cinnamon sugar. It's like a dessert. All right, so we've trimmed it, and now it says to crimp the edges of the crust. So I just take a fork and kind of press down, kind of like we did the toaster pastries, or like you would do peanut butter cookies. All the way around. And it wants to stick. Put some flour. So we are going to actually blind bake this pie crust. All right, everyone, so this is the second pie crust. And I realized that I left out a step in the first pie crust, so I hope that it turns out okay. I'm going to check on it in just a minute. So, you cut your parchment paper into a large circle. I can never cut a circle, but this is an ovalish circle. And place it into the bottom of your unbaked crust. Then you're going to pour the beans or your pie weights into the bottom of your unbaked crust. So I just use the dry beans, and I save them and use them over and over again. All right. Smooth until an even layer, and we're going to bake for 15 to 20 minutes. Then we'll take it out of the oven, take the parchment paper off and the weights out, and then we'll prick the bottom of the crust all over with a fork and return it to the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to go check on the first one where I could not follow directions, and I'm going to put this one in the oven after I make these cute little lines all the way around the pie crust. All right, so the lesson of the day is to read your instructions all the way through before you actually do something. All right, so here's the pie crust. This one's going in. I'm going to check on the other one since I did not follow directions, and hopefully I didn't mess it up too badly. All right, we'll be back in a few. All right, so it has been 15 to 20 minutes. I think I was able to save the first pie crust, hopefully. So what we need to do now is remove the parchment paper from the center of the crust, and then we're going to take a fork and punch holes in it and return it to the oven to bake until it is golden brown. So about 10 to 15 minutes. They're gonna roll out. If you try to pick them up with your hands right out of the oven, the pie weights will be very hot. This first crust has been sitting here for just a little while, so they're not as hot as they would have been if they had just come out. Right, so then you poke holes in the bottom and return it back to the oven for 10 to 15 minutes or until golden brown. And as you notice, the crust likes to shrink up, so it's just not as pretty as some people do it. I don't have it down perfectly, but it will taste good. All right, so I'm gonna put these back in the oven and I will show you what they look like at the end. All right, and here we have our pie crust out of the oven. It's not too brown because I am going to make pie out of it, and I don't want it to get too burnt along the edges. So this is how you make pie crust from scratch to finish. And remember, read the instructions all the way through before you start doing it, so you don't mess up like I did. But they turned out, this one's a little bit darker, looks better than this one, but I'm sure they're going to both taste just fine. All right, see you next time on From Scratch to Finish. Bye.